Today, I'm going to be breaking down and predicting the UFC 276 fight card. Let's get into it. This is going to be my biggest breakdown ever. We have 8 fights we are breaking down today. The first fight I'm going to be breaking down is Dricus du Plessis versus Brad Tavares on the prelims. I included this because, one, this is a banger of a card with tons of fights that you do not want to miss, this being one of them. Dricus du Plessis is an up-and-coming 185er. This is his 3rd fight in the UFC. He's a young, hot-looking prospect, and he's got a 100% success of finish rate. Meanwhile, we've got Brad Tavares, which most people know him from losing to Israel Adesanya. He's also lost to Edmund Shabazian, which is a questionable loss. As you can see, he's got a record of 19-6. He's got way more decisions than Dricus du Plessis, that's for sure. He's got 0, and Brad has 12, which could favor him if Dricus has trouble finding the finish in this fight. If Dricus can't get the submission or the knockout, which if you just look at the statistics, he's more likely to get a submission, I suppose, 9-7. You know, maybe when this gets into the 3rd, that could favor Brad Tavares because we've never seen Dricus du Plessis in the 3rd round in the UFC. So is he going to gas? That's an important question to ask. But let's call it how it is. Dricus du Plessis is a hot up-and-coming prospect, and Brad Tavares is, I don't even know if you could say he's quite at that gatekeeper status because I don't even think he's that high up. Like Neil Magny is an example of a gatekeeper. I don't know if Brad Tavares is. But the age difference is big too. Brad Tavares is 34. Mid-30s is kind of when you're either hitting your prime or leaving your prime, if Brad Tavares has had a prime. And Dricus du Plessis is only 28 years old, which could also be a bad thing. You know, people tend to favor the young guys versus the old guys. But there's one thing that comes with age that you can't get when you're young is experience. And I know he's got 18 fights. Brad has a little. What I say still applies. Dricus has been finished before, but if you want the truth, I really do not see Brad Tavares being the guy to finish or even beat Dricus du Plessis on a decision. Dricus du Plessis is a great kickboxer, and he's got awesome grappling. Dricus du Plessis has a nice, tight guard. He's also very, very comfortable with being backed up. And I don't think there's one aspect of the game that Brad Tavares does better than Dricus du Plessis. He's got this nice, tight guard. You know, he's always defensively sound, which I very, very much appreciate. He's also good getting backed up. He lands tons of leg kicks. Dricus du Plessis is almost a lock, in my opinion. The odds for this card in general have been shifting so much since I made these pictures. These pictures you see on screen, they actually take a good minute to make. When I was making this, Dricus du Plessis was a -135. I think now he's like a -160. And the funniest part about it all is that he started as an underdog. So I don't see Brad Tavares initiating like any grappling situations, and I don't see Dricus doing it either. I think Dricus du Plessis is going to stand and kickbox with Brad Tavares, and I could see a late knockout. I don't see it going to decision, so I got Dricus du Plessis by a 2nd round knockout. Speaking of up-and-coming prospects, up next we've got Ian Garry versus Gabe Green, and I didn't call out, but I pointed out Ian Garry on my last, I think it was UFC 260. I don't remember what it was, but it was his last fight. The last time he fought, it was against Darian Weeks, and I told you guys, keep an eye on Ian Garry. He could be the future of 170. He does have a bright future. But that Darian Weeks fight, I don't want to be that guy, but it did not make him look the best. He won, but he couldn't knock him out. He was very slow. Too slow. There's a difference of being tactical and sniping and picking your shots and just kind of coasting. Ian Garry seemed to be coasting against Darian Weeks, and maybe it could be because of the takedown threat. But look at Gabe Green's submissions. He's got more submissions than knockouts. Is Gabe Green going to look to wrestle with Ian Garry? You know, these are questions you can ask. And look at the odds. They would say that Ian Garry, and most people I talk to about it say Ian Garry is a lock. I don't know, man. This fight is a toss-up. Like, I'll be honest with you. I lean towards the sides of Ian Garry, but it is not definitive whatsoever. Gabe Green is way more willing to engage than Darian Weeks was. I'm going to compare this fight to Darian Weeks because that was his last fight, and that was Ian Garry's last fight, and we can compare and contrast the most recent with the upcoming. Darian Weeks was mostly a grappler, mostly a wrestler. Gabe Green will stand in the pocket and exchange with you. He will. It's like their two striking styles are fundamentally different. Ian Garry is long and picks you apart with jabs and such and nice kicks from the outside. And Gabe Green wants to run up on you, explode, knock you out in the pocket. So, I don't know. Look at the age difference. They've got 5 years. I just realized I accidentally put Gabe Green's reach in for his record. Gabe Green's 11-3, by the way. Ian Garry is undefeated. Gabe Green definitely poses a threat to Ian Garry. He's got knockout power and he's got grappling credentials, but Gabe Green got dropped in his last fight, you know? So overall, I am going to favor Ian Garry to win. I do think he's going to be the more technical, the more clean striker. Not the more powerful striker, but the more well-rounded striker, and I think that's going to favor him. Ian Garry knows he has to be looking out for takedowns, has to be looking on his takedown defense, which did hold up against Darian Weeks. So I favor Ian Garry to win this. I think he's going to kind of coast unless Gabe Green goes out there and is just winging big overhands, trying to get that knockout, trying to brawl heavy in the pocket. If Gabe Green stays a little bit composed and things like that, like he should as a professional fighter, stay composed, stay technical, stay defensively sound, do all that, I don't think Ian Garry is going to be able to knock him out. I see this going to decision, and I favor Ian Garry to win. Up next, we've got Jim Miller versus Cowboy Cerrone, number 2. This is their second fight, and in the first fight, Cowboy decimated Jim Miller. So Donald Cerrone and Jim Miller fought in the main event of a UFC fight night back in 2014, July 16th to be specific. So 8 years ago, and man oh man, what a difference does 8 years make? Because back in 2014, Cowboy was a killer. He was that, you know, nice kickboxing guy with that grappling background, things like that. He could grapple, but he's primarily knocking people out. But he also does get like triangle chokes and things like that. That was back in the day. Now, Cowboy, let's talk about his last fights. He went on that nice little 3-fight win streak. He beat Mike Perry, he beat Alexander Hernandez, and he beat Al Iaquinta. And everyone's like, Dad Cowboy is unstoppable. Father Cowboy is champ. You know, he dismantled Mike Perry, got him in that armbar. He took Al Iaquinta out, made it look easy. And he humbled Alexander Hernandez. Then he got paired against Tony Ferguson. Tough loss. Fair loss. Tony Ferguson was a killer at that time. I don't think he is anymore. Then he fought Justin Gaethje. I would say another killer, but I think Justin Gaethje is kind of overrated. But Justin Gaethje is definitely the favorite in that fight 10 times out of 10. Then Donald Cerrone lost to Cowboy. Or not, yeah, he lost to Cowboy. No, he lost to Conor McGregor. So 3-fight losing streak after that 3-fight win streak, you know. So he beat Mike Perry, beat Alexander Hernandez, beat Al Iaquinta. Then he lost to Tony Ferguson, lost to Justin Gaethje, lost to Conor McGregor. And those 3 losses are legit losses. Those aren't things that are making you think like, oh, okay, maybe he's not legit, because all 3 of those guys, Justin, Conor, and Tony, are all legit killers. After that, though, he had a fight with Anthony Pettis. He lost that fight, but I remember that being a robbery for sure. I think Cerrone really did win that fight. Then there was that Nico Price fight, which I believe he lost, but then it was overturned to a no contest. And then his arguably worst loss was to Alex Morono in 2021. He got knocked out with, what was it, like 20 seconds left in the round or something like that. He got knocked out by Alex Morono, and no disrespect to Alex Morono, but, you know, people don't really know who Alex Morono is. You know, he's not one of those guys like Cowboy. He's not one of those guys like Justin Gaethje. I keep saying Cowboy. Conor. He's not one of those guys like Conor. He's not one of those guys like Gaethje. He's not one of those guys like Tony or even Anthony Pettis. And right there, in my eyes, that's kind of, I was like, ooh, maybe Cowboy shouldn't be doing this anymore, because, you know, even the Pettis loss is understandable. The Nico Price, it's like, and then you lose Alex Morono, and like, oh man, Cowboy, time, you gotta start thinking about hanging it up. So Cowboy has not been looking too hot lately. He hasn't won since 2019. He hasn't had a win in over 3 years. He's competed in grappling tournaments on UFC Fight Pass. He lost in that. I don't remember what it was called, but I do remember watching it, and Cowboy just didn't look competitive. And I don't know what it is, man. I don't know what it is. Is it the money? Is it that he just lost interest? Is it that he knows that he's at the end of his career, and, you know, that title shot's gone and that drive is gone? Is that what it is? Or is he just too old? Is his skills just falling behind? Can he not keep up anymore? It's kind of what it's looking like, as sad as it is to say that. You look at Jim Miller, though. He's only 1 year younger than Cowboy, and he's been looking decent lately. He got a knockout win in 2021 against Eric Gonzalez, and he got a knockout win against Nicholas Mata in 2022. And he's been looking decent lately. Prime for prime, Cowboy dismantles Jim Miller every day of the week. Every single day. The striking and the wrestling. This fight being at 170 makes me want to favor Cowboy as well. You know, he's got 4 inches of height. He's got, what's the inch? 2 inches of reach. And overall, Jim Miller's a small lightweight, you could say. He's 100% going to be a small welterweight. He might be slower. He might be fatter. You know, he just straight up might be. So it's hard to differentiate, you know, prime Cowboy or legit Cowboy versus the Cowboy that's walking into the cage this Saturday. And the Jim Miller that's walking into the cage this Saturday. The Jim Miller that's walking into the cage this Saturday has been looking way hotter than the Cowboy that's been walking into the cage lately. So it's really tough to call this one, in my opinion, especially with Cowboy pretty much acknowledging this is his last fight when he was supposed to fight Joe Lozon for the second time, I believe. He talked about his son finally getting to watch his dad compete, and he starts tearing up. I'm going to play the clip right here. Donald Cerrone gets emotional when talking about his son. This does a lot. Watch this.
Mentioned talking to Joe about this is not an Apex fight. I mean, the last few ones have been no fans. You're something of a fan favorite. You're looking forward to getting back out there in front of a crowd?
Oh, man. It's not me. It's my son.
Just look, dude.
I can't wait.
That's real emotion right there. Look at that.
To walk out of that tunnel.
That's real shit right there.
You see the look on his face, you know.
Dude, that fucking gets me. That gets me right in the fucking heart, man.
So that's, yeah, I can't wait so he knows finally what I do, you know? It's
You hear him? He gets to finally know what I do.
crazy how emotional I get, but that's...
Dude, fuck, watching this gets me emotional, on God.
Anytime I was working out and I didn't want to do it, that's what I thought of.
Dude, that right there is so powerful, you know? It really, really is. Now, you may be thinking that's a dumb reason to even think Cowboy can win, you know? Maybe, yeah, sure, he wants it really bad, right? He wants the win, but don't you always want the win? Truthfully, you want it sometimes more than others. You really do. Cowboy, right there, you know his heart is in this 100%. Was it fully against Nico Price? Was it really against Alex Morono? I don't think so. I don't think so. And I think he knows this has to be one of, if not his last fight, second to last, if not the last. And he needs that win. He wants his son to see that win. And it's so hard to pick this fight. It really is. That's why I'm just staying away from it on betting entirely. Because Cowboy, within himself, the best Cowboy we've seen, beats the dog shit out of Jim Miller every goddamn day of the week. The question is, can he tap back into that? Unfortunately, I think life is cruel. I think no matter how bad you want something, sometimes it just cannot happen. And it kills me to say it, but I do think Jim Miller is going to win this. And even worse to say, I think he's going to knock out Cerrone. I do. I know Cowboy wants this. He needs this. His heart is in it. You saw the pure emotion about this fight. Well, it was about the Joe Lozon fight, but essentially the same thing. You saw how bad he wanted it. You did. But if I really wanted to do a backflip, it doesn't mean I can just go out there and do it. It's so sad to say. I really am pulling through, hoping Cerrone pulls through. But yeah, I got to pick Jim Miller. If I had to put $20 on either of them, disregarding odds, I'd feel more comfortable putting it on Jim Miller. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'll take the L on this one happily. But I got to pick Jim Miller by second round knockout. Especially because Cowboy's been doing multiple weight cuts for the first Joe Lozon fight and the second Joe Lozon fight. And now this fight, I think that's, you know, didn't do any favors for Tony Ferguson. Moving on to the main card, we've got Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Pedro Munhoz. I am so hyped for this fight. Pedro Munhoz has a chance. It's not a very big one, but he has a chance. Sean O'Malley has very, very fragile legs, and Pedro Munhoz is a kicker. 100% he's a kicker, and he's good at it. Pedro Munhoz has also never been finished. We know Sean O'Malley can put the pace on, but Pedro has never been finished, and that's very, very noticeable. That's notable to say. That's important. Also, look, Pedro has more submissions than knockouts. Pedro definitely has a better chance of beating this guy on the ground than he does standing up. Sean O'Malley does have good takedown defense. He does have good jiu-jitsu. We know that for a fact. The only way Pedro can win this, in my opinion, is make it go to third round, get Sean a little bit tired, maybe get him to shoot, hurt those legs. Maybe he can get the Cheeto Vera win, and I'm terrified this is going to happen with someone with money on Sean O'Malley. I'm terrified Pedro Munhoz is going to get the Cheeto Vera win over Sean O'Malley. I think he's going to get a freak leg accident, and, you know, he's going to, like, fuck up some nerve or tendon or whatever, ligament, whatever. I'm not a doctor. He's going to fuck something up in his legs, and that's going to be the fight right there. It's happened twice to Sean O'Malley. Happened against Cheeto Vera. That's his only loss. And early on in his career, when he still had normal colored hair, it happened against, I think it was some Asian guy. And Sean O'Malley couldn't stand anymore. It was the last round. Sean O'Malley couldn't stand anymore. And his opponent, instead of making him stand and strike, the opponent grappled with him. Which, your ankle's fucked. But if you're grappling, that's a non-issue for the most part, obviously. And Sean O'Malley got that win. So there's been 2 times in the UFC alone where Sean O'Malley has had his legs / ankle or feet, whatever, give out on him. Happens pretty frequently. Pedro Munhoz can absolutely make that happen. He really, really can. And I'm terrified to death that's going to happen. Especially in combination with the fact that Sean O'Malley probably can't knock out Pedro Munhoz. Sean O'Malley probably has to win by decision. So he's got to avoid getting that injury for 15 minutes. He doesn't got to worry about, just until the knockout, just like 4 minutes, just like 3 minutes, just 7 minutes. He's going to go the full 15. Can he avoid fucking up his leg in that full 15 minutes? That's the question. I think he can. I do think Sean O'Malley's getting better and better every time we see him. His last fight, I forget, Paiva, I think it was. Everyone's like, oh, this is his toughest competition yet. And up until that point, it was, but he made it look easy. Now, Pedro Munhoz is his toughest competition. And I do think he's relatively going to make this look easy. Unless Pedro Munhoz gets insanely lucky and gets him on like that leg injury, I don't think Pedro really has a shot here. Pedro's kind of on the decline. As you can see, he's 19-7. He did almost beat Dominic Cruz. I'll give him that. He nearly finished Dominic Cruz in the first, but then Dom Cruz came back and just put the clinic on him in the second and the third. He also got dog walked by Jose Aldo. So overall, I just do think that Sean O'Malley is the better striker. I don't think he's the more overall well-rounded fighter, because I do think Pedro Munhoz has a bit of a stronger grappling game than Sean O'Malley. But Sean O'Malley's going to keep this standing. Sean O'Malley's going to stay at a distance and literally use Pedro Munhoz as a punching bag, because when Pedro gets hurt, he kind of seems to shell up and eventually just throw big right overhands, which Sean O'Malley shouldn't get clipped by. Sean O'Malley is insanely slick on the feet, and he should see things like that coming. He makes reads excellently. I see Sean O'Malley winning this by decision. Up next, we've got Robbie Lawler versus Bryan Barberena. Robbie Lawler is kind of in that cowboy position, in my opinion. Let's take a look at his record lately. So he went on that incredible win streak back in 2014. You know, he lost to Johnny Hendricks, but then came back, beat Ellenberger, beat Matt Brown, beat Hendricks again. Well, not again, but had the rematch and won. Beat Rory McDonald in that war, beat Carlos Condit in that war. Lost to Tyron Woodley in that knockout fashion in 2017. Or that was 2016, my bad. Beat Cerrone in 2017. But then since that Woodley fight, since those 2 wars with Rory and Carlos, he hasn't really looked the same. Those 2 wars, I think, took a lot out of him, physically and mentally. He got knocked out bad by Tyron Woodley, beat Donald Cerrone, but then lost to RDA, lost to Ben Askren. I know, questionable loss. He arguably should have won that fight. Well, was going to win that fight. The fight got stopped early. I'm sure you guys know the story. Lost to Colby Covington. Legit loss. He got fucking dog walked in that fight. Lost to Neil Magny, and then won against Nick Diaz. So he is on a 1-fight win streak. He's not on a big losing streak. He's not on a losing streak at all. But Nick Diaz isn't the best win to have since 2017 in 5 years. An old Nick Diaz, an old fat Nick Diaz who looked like he didn't want to be there, who essentially just quit mid-fight. He got knocked down, got his nose busted open. Ref told him to stand up, and he just went, is that really the best win to have? Since those wars with Condit and McDonald back in the day, his fighting style has changed significantly, and maybe it's because of those wars, maybe it's because of age, but Robbie Lawler used to brawl with people, but now when he has strikes coming his way, he does this weird thing where he shells up and he's like just trying to fucking Muhammad Ali bob and weave the shots, but he's not moving intelligently enough to slip shots. He just gets hit a bunch, and then he gets trapped in this like lulling pattern of letting his opponent walk him down and trying to react to the shots and forgetting to throw out shots of his own. It's been happening in every single fight. It happened in the Nick Diaz fight. Nick Diaz was outlanding him. He did outland him by 19 strikes. Nick Diaz landed 150 and Robbie Lawler landed 131. So, I mean, Robbie Lawler doesn't really have any terrible losses like Donald Cerrone does, arguably. RDA is a legit loss. The Ben Askren loss was questionable, iffy stoppage for sure. Colby Covington is the second best welterweight on the planet. That's okay to lose to. The Neil Magny one is a little questionable, but that one's okay. He mostly lost that fight because he kept getting taken down a lot, and he did get outstruck as well, but still. He did come off that win against Nick Diaz. But if we look at Bryan Barberena, you know, he's going to decision a lot too. Last fight, he went to decision with Matt Brown, got taken down 5 times in that fight. Bryan Barberena went to decision with Darian Weeks, got taken down 4 times in that fight, won that decision. Had a fight against Jason Witt, got taken down 8 times. Before that, he fought Anthony Ivy, got taken down 5 times. So you can see his biggest issue is going to be the grappling. But Robbie Lawler's not going out there and going to go shoot for takedowns. What is his takedown? Let's see. Takedown average is 0.66 with a 64% accuracy. This is going to be a striking match. And Bryan Barberena is competitive on the feet. Like, he outlanded Matt Brown. He stood toe-to-toe in strikes with Darian Weeks. He outlanded Jason Witt. He outlanded Anthony Ivy. You know, he's not like getting whooped in his fights. He's 3-1 in his last 4. Bryan Barberena is going to be the younger fighter. He's going to be probably the hungrier fighter. I know Bryan Barberena isn't the hottest competition. He's 17-8. Robbie Lawler is 29-15. A lot of people are picking Robbie Lawler. He's 40 years old, though. I mean, I know Yoel Romero is doing good at 45, but if you want the truth, I don't think Robbie has a good chance of winning this. He has a chance, don't get me wrong, but I see a lot of people picking him, and especially on betting lines. I'm taking Bryan Barberena all day, but for my official pick, I am going Bryan Barberena by decision. I don't think Robbie Lawler is going to knock him out, and I don't think Bryan Barberena is going to knock Robbie out. I don't think that's going to happen. Robbie Lawler hasn't been knocked out in a long time, and neither has Bryan Barberena. He hasn't been knocked out since 2019 by Randy Brown. I see Robbie Lawler falling into that same pattern of, you know, becoming too defensive and forgetting to throw offense. That was happening bad against Nick Diaz too. I mean, a little bit better, I think, but it was still happening. And if that fight went the full, it was scheduled for 5 rounds, I believe. If that went into the 4th and the 5th, not that this is a 5 round, but still, I think Robbie Lawler would have arguably lost to Nick Diaz because on the feet, Nick Diaz was looking really good, minus that really weird kick he started the fight with. I see Bryan Barberena at this point in both of their ages and where we're at in time currently. I do see Bryan Barberena probably going to be able to put the pace on him. Robbie Lawler going to fall in that defensive lull again, and I see Bryan Barberena winning this by decision. Up next, we've got maybe one of the hardest to call fights, Alex Pereira versus Sean Strickland. So we all know how this is going to go. Well, actually, no, we don't. I don't know why I said that, but we know their plans. Actually, that's not even true. We don't even know much about this fight. We know what Alex Pereira wants to do. We know he's a kickboxer. We know he wants to knock Sean Strickland out. What we don't know is how is Sean Strickland going to handle this fight? Is he going to wrestle? He says, hey, there's a chance I become a crotch sniffer. He said that. But he also is defensively sound on the feet. He's not getting knocked down. I don't think he's ever been knocked down in the UFC. Alex Pereira is a different level of striking, but still, look at this. Alex Pereira is only 5-1 in MMA. I know he was amazing in kickboxing, but we're not in kickboxing anymore. It's different. This is MMA. Sean Strickland is 25-3 in MMA. So, I know Sean Strickland seems like a bit of a wild card. He seems like a bit of an instability in terms of predictions. But if Sean Strickland can fight this fight smart, if he can stick to a game plan, a well-formulated, thought-out game plan, of including grappling, including clinch work, including takedowns, Sean Strickland 1000% has a chance. I remember when this fight was first speculated, Pereira was like a -500 or something. Now, Sean does have 3 inches of height missing and 3 inches of reach missing, so he is going to be the smaller fighter in there for sure, but that doesn't mean he can't win. Now, I know Alex Pereira has been working with Glover Teixeira on BJJ and grappling and takedowns and things like that, but, you know, it doesn't always translate. Not everyone could be the Henry Cejudo of the coaching world. He's probably the best MMA fighter turned coach that you can have, in my opinion. Glover, I'm sure, is pretty legit too. But I just want to say before I get my official pick, it is 100% possible that Sean Strickland can win this. And it is also 100% possible that Sean Strickland can get knocked out. The issue is that Alex Pereira has been taken down twice in both of his UFC fights, but he does have an overall takedown defense of 73%, which isn't bad at all. But I do believe if Sean Strickland wants to, he can take him down. Sean Strickland has a takedown average of 1.16 with an accuracy of 61%. And if he really starts going for takedowns, I believe he can get him. Sean Strickland is on a nice little winning streak here. Nordine Taleb, Jack Marshman, Brandon Allen, Jocko, because I don't know how to say his first name, Uriah Hall, and Jack Hermanson. I know not the craziest wins, and most of them are decision wins, but there's no lie in saying Sean Strickland is the more experienced MMA fighter, the more well-rounded MMA fighter. I lied also. Sean Strickland has been knocked out once. This was back in 2018 versus Elizu Zaleski dos Santos, I believe is how you say his name. That's his only knockout loss, though. Sean Strickland is a defensively sound fighter. He is an intelligent fighter. He is a good fighter. I know his persona distracts a lot of people from acknowledging that, but it's still true. He's defensively sound. He's not as stupid as everyone thinks he is. He's a little bit goofy in press conferences, which I thought was hilarious, but he's not a dumb guy. He can make fucking smart fight picks and fight IQ and thing like that. Overall, he's the more well-rounded fighter. He's the safer fighter to pick here because if he does implement that wrestling game plan, I think he wins. I think he wins by decision. That's my official pick. I do think Sean Strickland is going to win this by decision. But if he goes out there and wants to strike with Alex Pereira, because I could see him getting egoed out there, be like, you know what, I can do this without becoming a fucking crotch sniffer, things like that. He's going to get knocked out. The striking of Alex Pereira is on a different level compared to Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland has the fundamentals down. He's got that jab. He sticks behind that jab phenomenally, and it works very well. But against Alex Pereira, especially with the size difference, it's not going to work like it did against someone like Jack Hermanson. It's not. Alex Pereira will find a way to back him up, probably get a nice head kick in, finish him that way. But if Sean Strickland, it all comes down to, will Sean Strickland implement a game plan and fight smart? That's what it comes down to. Will he do that? If he does, he takes this fight. If he doesn't, he loses this fight. And I think, jokes aside and everything, I think Sean Strickland does care about getting the belt. On the press conference, I see him talking about the belt, setting up the fight with Izzy. I do think this is something he cares about. I don't think he's exactly like a Derek Lewis type where he's just saying, oh, I don't really care about that belt. I think Sean Strickland cares. I think he wants this. I think he wants the money. And I think Sean Strickland will fight smart to get there. I got Sean Strickland by decision. Up next, we've got the co-main event of the evening, the featherweight championship bout, Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway. This is a super easy pick in my opinion. In reality, it is. But more likely than not, this fight is going to decision, and judges absolutely suck. And I'm not going to base my pick off of that, but if you're betting like I am, do not pick any winner in this fight. Don't pick Max Holloway. Don't pick Alexander Volkanovski. There will be a robbery. If Volkanovski actually wins, Max Holloway is going to win. If Max Holloway actually wins, that's just how judges are. They don't seem to get fights right very often. They got the Matus Gamrot versus Arman Tsarukyan fight wrong. They've been terrible lately. They absolutely have. And this is going to be another close 5-rounder. I think that's pretty much obvious. Max Holloway has the blessed chin he has, he will not get knocked out. Although those chins don't stay like that forever, and Alexander Volkanovski can crack it. He looked so insanely fast and strong against the Korean Zombie. I don't think he's doing that to Max Holloway, but it's a possibility. It's a possibility that one day Max's chin just snaps out of existence like that, and he doesn't have that to fall back on. And if he doesn't have that, he is screwed. But it's really simple. We've seen this fight happen twice. Volkanovski looked better than Max Holloway in both of those fights, and since their second fight, Volkanovski's been looking better than he was, and Holloway hasn't. He really hasn't. In that Yair Rodriguez fight, he was getting tagged, clipped, and pieced up. Volkanovski is a better striker than, I know MMA math doesn't work, but I know Volkanovski's better than Yair, and Max had trouble with Volkanovski. Maybe it's something to do with the size of Yair. Maybe Max Holloway is better at fighting smaller guys. But Volkanovski is 2-0, and in the UFC, no one has ever been 2-0 in a trilogy and then won that third fight. And I don't think there's any reason to think that's going to change here, especially because we know Alexander 50-45'd Max Holloway once. That second fight was close, but Alexander Volkanovski definitely won that. And Volkanovski's just been getting better and better and better. He's been finding his groove. He's been looking more confident, more comfortable out there. And I don't see anything changing. I really don't. I mean, Max Holloway always has a fighting chance, especially because he's got 10 rounds, 50 minutes in the cage with this guy. He knows his game plan better than ever. But Max Holloway looks tense. He looks bad at that press conference. I don't know if it's a bad weight cut. Like, that's a legitimate thing Volkanovski said. Maybe he does have a bad weight cut and he's a little cranky and things like that. Maybe Max Holloway's feeling a bit insecure. He's 0-2. He's about to be 0-3 in title fights against him. And then what? He's not getting any more shots after that. Well, no, in the UFC, that's not a guarantee. But still, maybe the pressure's on for Max Holloway, because in reality, it is. This is his last shot. The pressure is really not on Volkanovski. Volkanovski's still in a good position if he loses this fight. Max Holloway loses this fight, he's going to be 23-7. No more featherweight title shots. What's he going to do? Maybe that's getting to him. Maybe he's not as confident as he once was. Maybe he's not as secure in his ability. You can tell his mental state's a little off, and that's important to pay attention to. So with that being said and taken into consideration, and knowing Volkanovski after those two fights is obviously the better fighter, you got to pick Volkanovski. But it's going to be close, and if you're thinking of betting on this fight, don't pick either of them. Pick a bet that's like fight goes to decision if you're trying to do parlay adders. Don't add either of these guys to your parlay. It's going to be a close fight, and judges suck. Last but not least, we've got the main event of the evening, the 185 title fight, Jared Cannonier versus Israel Adesanya. All Jared Cannonier has here is a puncher's chance. This is going to look something like Ciryl Gane versus Derek Lewis, in my opinion. There's not going to be grappling in this fight. Jared Cannonier is not going to be looking to grapple with Izzy because A, he's not going to develop a grappling game strong enough to make it matter versus someone like Israel Adesanya with such good takedown defense and grappling defense in general. He's going to keep this as a striking battle, and I think that's one that Jared Cannonier is going to lose. Jared Cannonier is very overrated in my opinion, and I'm just going to come out and say it. He arguably lost to Kelvin Gastelum, for real. He got whooped by Robert Whittaker, and he looked bad against Derek Brunson, and I'm so confused because I'm like one of two people in the world that think that everyone watches that Jared Cannonier and Derek Brunson fight, and they're like, look at the elbows. I'm like, oh, you mean the elbows that like Derek Brunson was rocked on the feet for a solid minute? He got, what was it, half guard or side control and landed like 3 light elbows? The dude that was already rocked and out of the fight? What are you talking about, elbows? Jared Cannonier got dropped, was it dropped or rocked? One of the two by Derek Brunson. I know MMA math isn't perfect and you shouldn't do it, but dude, Israel Adesanya is the best striker in the middleweight division and potentially the whole UFC. And if Jared Cannonier is getting clipped and hurt by Derek Brunson, what is he going to do against Israel Adesanya? Israel Adesanya doesn't get hit that often. The only time he's been hit clean was in that Kelvin Gastelum fight. Because like Jared Cannonier is not going to win this by sticking a jab to him and mixing in takedowns. He's not going to do the Jan Blachowicz because he doesn't have the strength or size advantage. Well, he has the strength over him, but he doesn't have a significant size advantage over him like Jan Blachowicz does at 205. The only revenue for Jared Cannonier to win this is just that lucky KO, but Israel Adesanya is not that dumb of a fighter to just leave his chin open for that big right overhand. Jared Cannonier really has no chance of winning this, in my opinion. Israel Adesanya is an absolute lock. I can see Izzy taking this to decision, but I'm going to go like a 3 or 4 round knockout. Round 3, round 4. I'm feeling round 4. I'm going to go with a round 4 knockout. Israel Adesanya is just better everywhere, especially because we know there's no threat of grappling. It's a pure striking match, and Israel Adesanya is the better striker through and through in every aspect, defensively, offensively, kicking, punching, everything. Jared Cannonier's got nothing here. He really doesn't. He's also 38, and this is towards the end of his career. You know, once you start hitting 38, you're kind of at the end there. Israel Adesanya wins this easy. I'm going round 4 knockout. So those are my predictions. That's my breakdown. Let me know, what are your picks? What fight are you looking forward to the most? Let me know. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.